Hello, everybody, and welcome to MAWA's Parent Academy. I am Dr. Bovino. I am the curriculum director here in MAWA, and I'm very excited to have on screen with me three wonderful, wonderful staff members from MAWA, Ms. Capani, Mr. Alfano, and Ms. Murphy. They are some of our elementary guidance counselors, and they're here tonight to talk to you about Nurtured Heart and how it works with Responsive Classroom, but then also how you can use all of these skills and different tricks with your children at home. So we hope you enjoy tonight. If you do have a question throughout the session, please use the chat and you just put your question right in the chat. And at the end, I'll read the questions to our wonderful counselors. And so they'll be able to answer them at the end. Again, welcome to MAWA's Parent Academy, and I hope you enjoy tonight.
Good evening,
Team,
everybody.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Good evening, everybody. We just wanted to start by introducing ourselves. My name is Craig Alfano. Like Dr. Bovino said, I'm the school counselor at Joyce Comer. I'm also a school social worker on the child study team. I've been in the MAWA School District for 11 years now. I've worked with kids my entire life on so many different platforms. I've been a licensed therapist. I've worked in New York City as a clinical social worker. I served as a math teacher. I've been a coach for the past 20 years. I also have my own little small business where I partner with NBA teams and players and get to run basketball camps and work with thousands of kids every single summer. And I am also the parent of 2 teenage boys.
Thank you, Craig. Hi, everyone. My name is Diana Capani. I am really happy to be here with all of you tonight and to spend time with you this evening. I am a licensed school counselor. I've been counseling across different environments for 20 years. I've worked as a child protective specialist in New York City and an employment counselor for women on public assistance. I've worked in many different school settings, including residential, private, and public schools in both New York and New Jersey, ranging from kindergarten through 12th grade. And I am also a mother of 2 beautiful kids, a boy age 10 and my daughter who's 12 years old.
And my name is Kyla Murphy. I'm currently working at Betsy Ross in Lenape since September. I'm a licensed social worker in both New York and New Jersey. Previously, I was working at a pediatric hospital in San Diego before I came here, and I have an extreme passion for animal-assisted therapy with some experience with equine therapy, and I'm currently studying a little bit more about veterinary social work.
All right, so the purpose of tonight is to give you guys a snapshot of the Nurtured Heart approach. This is a method that's equipped with language that we have already been starting to use in our schools with our students, and we have already found tremendous success with it. It's very similar to the Responsive Classroom, which is a model that we in MAWA have been following for years now. It's been amazing. This is approach was founded by Howard Glasser, a guy in 1992. And its premise is not energizing negative behavior, energizing the positive, and establishing clear and consistent consequences. You're going to hear all of us talk a lot about the relationship tonight. It always goes back to the relationship. So think of every relationship you've ever been in. You are the common denominator. So you'll hear us speak of the relationship and the significance of it throughout the next hour. We want to start off, you can flip a slide, Diana. We want to start off by showing you guys a funny little video here, which in my mind is the basis of the Nurtured Heart approach. It really focuses on the very first stand of the approach, which is not to energize negative behavior. So you'll see in the video, the young boy here, throwing tantrums, throwing himself on the ground only when he is in the sight of his parents. And then the parent then relocates herself to another part of the house and the dog follows suit. And you'll see the boy seeking that negative attention throughout the video. Go back to the kitchen. So I'm sure we have all seen our kids throw a tantrum at some point. But how often do we really analyze the explanation behind that behavior? What is really going on in the situation? So I want you guys to remember that kids don't necessarily throw tantrums, right? Tantrums are throwing our kids. So let's see, we could go to the next slide, Diana. One more backup. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. All right, so let's all take a moment to look at this photo. What do you see? What do we see? Do we see chaos? Do we see a messy room? Do we see a path? What's happening that we can applaud, but more importantly, what's not happening that we can applaud. And NHA, we're really encouraged to be like producers and directors of our own lives. What are we choosing to place emphasis on or energy on, like shedding light on something, or what are we choosing to cast in the shadows? We all know this can be extremely challenging at times, especially when we're trying to get the kids out of the house in the morning, we're trying to rush to work, we're trying to get dinner on the table, get their homework, get them to their various activities. We're hoping that tonight we can provide you all with some suggestions and tools that can help with working on how we're energizing our interactions and improve on the way that we're able to approach, which will hopefully in turn just strengthen our relationships with ourselves and our children, but more importantly, also the relationship that our children have with themselves. All right, so let's take a look at this. What do we see here? We see all of our favorite foods, junk food. We see popcorn and fries and hamburgers and sugar. Many emotionally intense children may become addicted to negative attention they're receiving, similar to the addiction that one may feel to junk food. It fills us up momentarily, but it has no long-term lasting benefits or nourishment. That repeated negative attention or junk food can then translate to the child as repeated failures, which can then result in lowering their self-esteem. They may begin to think or say things like, I'm not a good kid. All I ever do is get into trouble. I can't do anything right. I imagine that all of us have some moments that are coming to our minds when we hear that. NHA is an approach to help create a new inner narrative for our children to try to kind of fill their buckets and find their inner greatness.
So to kind of bring everything back together, the Nurtured Heart approach is a relationship-based method that focuses on actively recognizing at the time the positive behaviors through energizing and de-energizing. So you'll learn a little bit more about energizing and de-energizing specific behaviors. This supports the child to build their inner portfolio, or we call it inner wealth. Often you guys might hear your child say something about filling their bucket. So that's something that's common language in our schools, very similar to inner wealth. So overall, this approach teaches us how to energize and put the same amount of energy into when our child is doing something positive as when we typically do when they're doing something negative.
Okay, what you see in the backpack here are examples of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, which are potential traumatic experiences in childhood that have a profound impact on physical and mental health and behavior. So NHA encourage us to see the child behind the behavior, always looking at the explanation of the behavior. Teachers and staff don't always know what's happening, in the home environment, what certain kids are bringing to school with them. So I love it when parents call me. I encourage them to call me and email me as much as they want, because only then can I really speak with their teachers and support that child the best way we know how in the school environment. After all, kids are spending over 1,000 hours a year in school. So I love it when parents call me and tell me what's going on in the home, if there's significant change, so we can best support them at school. In a similar way, things are happening at school that can have an impact on the child and their behavior in the home. They might maybe got some dirty looks in the cafeteria. Maybe they had no one to play with at recess that day. Kids particularly with anxiety, and you might relate to this if you're one of those parents, that they often hold it together during the school day, only to have an outburst at home and unleash on you when they get home, because that is where they feel most comfortable. I have a, you could flip, yeah, I have a colleague who's a psychologist, and she is always talking about the thermometer. So we have to regularly monitor ourselves. Our kids, especially as they get older, are going to say and do awful things to us that they don't necessarily mean, but they are most comfortable doing that in front of us because we, as their parents, are going to love them no matter what. So you need to monitor your own thermometer. I remember when I was in high school, my mom said, you can't go out past 10 o'clock. That was my curfew. Nothing good happens past 10 o'clock. On the thermometer here, nothing good happens halfway past the yellow here. So when you are engaging with your child and we are about halfway up that yellow mark, we should never, ever, ever engage in a back and forth. Nothing productive will happen. It is impossible to rationalize with the irrational person in that moment. So we need to take care of ourselves. We need to walk away. You need to go and walk your dog. You need to go call your friend and vent. You need to take a walk in the other room and do some breathing and revisit the conversation when we're able to bring that thermometer back to the green area. So I guess I'll close with this on this particular image. And I've done these things. I have screamed and yelled at my kids. I have snatched the iPad from their hands. I have ripped the Xbox wires out of the wall. I have ripped the wires out of the PlayStation. And that to me is the junk food that what Diana previously spoke about. It has no long-term nourishing effects. I may have solved my problem in the immediate moment. The computer is off, the iPad is in my possession, but I have no long-lasting effects. The nourishment of my relationship has not been fulfilled.
So the nurtured heart approach and responsive classroom, there's a lot of similarities in that. So it's something that we've noticed as teachers and educators. So you guys will probably also kind of pick up on things. So responsive classroom is something that we're currently doing here in MAWA. It's an evidence-based approach to teaching that promotes autonomy and responsibility. It also emphasizes on the social emotional learning alongside with academic skills. For an example, things that we do are morning meetings with our classes and interactive modeling. So different ways that this can be applied at home is providing your child with a predictable environment or schedule, even when they come home, creating a specific time for families to have reflections about their days. Like in the morning, our teachers are able to reflect with their students, and at the end of the day, they also are. So being able to kind of promote that opportunity for your child also at home is really important. Always having those open-ended questions, because I know sometimes children might shut down at the end of the day and they don't really want to talk. So promoting open-ended questions like, what's one thing that went well today? And if they're amazing at answering that, up it to 2 or 3 and kind of see how they respond back to you. Or what's one thing that you were proud of today, and kind of promoting, open communication along with open-ended questions so we can get more information out of them. One of our favorite things to do is rose and thorn. Some of you might be familiar with this kind of idea, but you talk about like one success and one challenge that you might have had in the day, and it promotes just having an open communication. A lot of the time we see families do this at like the dinner table, things like that, but really providing them with like a predictable environment also at home is really important because they do have that at school.
Thank you, Kyla. And I echo what you say as a parent with a young boy who, when I ask him questions, it's like a black hole. I have no idea what goes on in his life at school every day. And I've found that using Rose and Thorn with him has been really helpful in getting information out of him and building on that relationship. Okay, so inner wealth. Inner wealth is a very big component of the Nurtured Heart approach. I'm going to say NHA moving forward. So in NHA, we are encouraged to not only praise children for their good behavior, but to provide in great detail examples of what they're doing that makes their behavior appropriate and great to help contribute again to their inner wealth, their inner portfolio. So NHA suggests whenever we're picking an emotionally nutritious word or a characteristic to describe something, we then are going to describe what it takes to be that characteristic. So we will provide the emotionally nutritious words and language will be available to you after this presentation. So for example, if we were to say something like, "You're so responsible," NHA encourages us to be even more detailed. So for example, saying, I see that you brought your plate into the table. That's really responsible of you. And that takes a lot of self-discipline and thoughtfulness. And I see you, I notice you, and I appreciate you. Again, going back to energy, which is really what this is all about, let's think about the last time we had a conversation with our child or a child when they were doing something we didn't want them to do. We likely gave our child or that child a great deal of our time and our energy and our passion and our closeness and our relationship when we were talking to them about that unexpected behavior. We're all guilty of doing this. We may have said something like, hey, what are you doing over there? Cut it out. We don't do that in this house. You know better than that. What were you thinking? What could you have done? He could have gotten hurt. On and on and on and on. But when the same child does what they're supposed to do, very often we're not saying anything at all, or we're just saying something like, hey, nice job. Essentially, what we're teaching our children in those moments is that we are giving them the gift of ourselves and energizing our relationship when they are exhibiting behaviors we are not trying to encourage, versus giving them the energy when they are doing the behaviors that we want to continue to encourage. So from that perspective, the child is learning how to access that junk food or that negative attention.
Think of NHA as a three-legged stool. One stand cannot exist without the other. So just like a stool needs its three legs in order to serve its purpose, one stand cannot exist without the other. They all survive crucially together. So stand one is absolute no. I refuse to give my time, my energy, my relationship to any negative behavior, nor respond to it in an animated way. So I kind of want to show you another little video here. It's a cute video of a tiny baby who, it's funny. I hope it brings a smile to your face, but mom in the video is clearly energizing what the baby is not supposed to do. So naturally, the baby thinks it's a game, and the back and forth begins.
My apologies. I appreciate your patience. I'm just going to pull the video up. Okay.
I'm not sure if this might interest you,
My
but
apologies,
people ask
people.
me, how did you lose?
This is really smart. So this is an easy way to extinguish small fires. You can keep this.
All right, here we go. Thanks for your patience.
Wait, no. No. Pace, don't do it. No. Don't do it. No. Don't do it. Don't do it. No. 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 Don't even think of no. Don't even think about no. 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 No.
It's a very interesting video. As you can see, mom is energizing what the baby's not supposed to be doing. The baby then engages in the back and forth and naturally thinks it's a game. I'm sure all of us have witnessed this with our kids, where they test the waters and try to see which buttons they can press with us. It's important to know, though, that every time we scream or yell no to our child, we're essentially teaching them that we don't trust them. And trust, as we know, is the foundation of every single relationship. So I'll say that again, because it's kind of important. Every time we scream or yell no to our kids, we were essentially teaching them that we don't trust them. And trust is the foundation of any successful relationship. Stand two.
So stance 2 is absolute yes. So I am constantly recognizing the success and achievement that my child is displaying, no matter how small. So it can be something very small, or it could be very large, but we want to be able to recognize it right at the moment. I present them with clear and undeniable evidence to their value. So we want to really be able to pinpoint something that they're actively doing in the present moment that they're not going to be able to argue with us about or say, well, we're all doing it, things like that. So bringing something positive to them is really just building their inner wealth is something that we're trying to gain from this. So absolute yes, you're recognizing something that they're doing that's positive, no matter how small.
And the last stand 3, absolute clear. It's absolute clear, consistent clarity. Stand 3 is when NHA really proposes that the most important time to talk about rules is when they're not being broken. So for example, rather than yelling something like or saying, how many times have I asked you not to bother your brother? NHA encourages us to work on talking about the expected behaviors frequently and clearly and consistently when those behaviors or rules are not being broken. Stand 3 also considers that for some children, positive rules like be respectful, be polite, are just too vague. There is no clear sense of where the boundaries lie. Positive rules sometimes can escalate patterns of challenging behavior, similar to some of the analogies we've been talking about, which can contribute to almost their addiction for negative attention. NHA really advocates sometimes for providing clear negative rules depending on the child, such as no hitting, no swearing, no pushing. NHA also in Stand 3 encourages us to provide consequences with zero energy and with no warnings and no reminders. And I know I'm guilty of this. This is a very high bar to set. So many of us have said things like, this is your last chance, last warning, or you'll lose your screen time. But what Stand 3 is really encouraging us to do is to provide absolutely no energy when we are following through with consequences, because when we do that, we're offering the gift of ourselves and again, that negative attention.
All right, I want you to think of yourself as a toy at this moment. Think of yourself as a toy when you're in front of your kids. Howard Glasser writes, we are all loaded with features. We are animated, reactive, and interactive. We also have the best remote control ever made. In addition to our ability to walk, talk, skip, dance, make faces, and do just about anything else under the sun, we can display a multitude of fascinating emotions and moods in a virtually infinite number of combinations, subtleties, and gradations. No other toy could possibly compete with us. So we are always in control of what features we let out. We are in control of how we respond in every response we make to our child. We have already, in essence, hotwired the toy. So sometimes we need to be our kid's favorite toy, and we are lighting up and our features are beeping and going crazy. And other times we have to be incredibly quiet and an incredibly boring toy. We are not giving the gift of ourselves to any type of negative behavior. There is a clear difference in NHA between ignoring and deciding not to energize the behavior. We're not ignoring, rather we are eagerly waiting for that tiny moment to dive back into the relationship. I recall a student earlier this year who failed to submit one homework assignment. He had limited support at home. He rarely did anything relative to assignments. And then he completed one full homework assignment and he brought that in. We had a celebration like there was no tomorrow. We had streamers, we had music, we had a party. We let him know 1,000 times that day how proud of him we were. And we celebrated. And that was something that's an expectation, to do your homework and bring it into school. But NHA teaches us to catch great. And that was great for him. And we recognized and celebrated that moment. And then we have to I want you guys to take a look at each and every day, where and what are your buttons? What are the buttons that are pressed easily for you? Because if we're asking our kids to reset themselves, we have to reset ourselves before we ask them to reset.
Thank you, Craig. Reset.
So reset. This concept, honestly, is exactly what it sounds like, resetting ourselves. So sometimes we notice that our child might need to reset themselves. And through the Nurtured Heart approach, they explained that, or they utilized it in the classroom, where an individual might reset themselves or be asked to reset themselves. And in that time, they might rest their head down on the table for a minute or so. While they're resting, they're reflecting on possibly why they needed to reset, whether it was behavioral or emotional. And they're also taking deep breaths and calming their body back down. So I actually tested this out just this last week in one of my 3rd grade classes. And it was really important because we were able to provide both the students with the tool, but also the teacher, and kind of giving her the opportunity and the control of being able to reset herself also if she needed to. But also having this common language of, you know, if you notice that somebody might need a reset, just using that common word of reset, and then teaching your child that so they know that, okay, maybe I do need to just, you know, take a break, rest, reflect, and take some breaths. So even as adults, we also need to reset ourselves just in order to create a positive environment at home. Whether, like we said before, go for a walk, walk the dog, it's really just important to take a moment for yourself in order for you to reset and create that positive environment. And, you know, it's an easier way, or it's a better way to be able to reapproach our child once we're reset, we're calm, and we're balanced ourselves out again.
Thanks, Kyla. So who needs to reset though when our houses look like this every day, right? We're coming after school, we're all happy, we're energized, we're organized, we're all home on time. We have so many other people to support us and resources, and we're well rested. We have nowhere to go. Absolutely not. That's not what our houses are looking like, or our homes. All of our family units are very different. Our needs are different. These pictures are more likely what we're seeing at home sometimes. We, as people, we have our own invisible, as adults, we have our own invisible backpacks, right? We may have had an extremely hard day. We're balancing so many things at the same time, and it can be difficult to maintain our anger thermometer at an appropriate level when we ourselves are carrying around so much. When we see our children feeling flustered or overwhelmed or needing our attention, but we're unable to give it to them when they need it, it can be really challenging. NHA is helpful in just that self-reflection reset moment, but also by using recognitions. So we are going to get into that on the next slide. These are those opportunities where we can use language to help identify what we're seeing in the home, and then providing follow-up on how to build on our relationships rather than providing them with that immediate negative attention.
So often as adults, we expect the child to know what we want them to be doing, but we do honestly need to teach them and re-educate them on exactly what we're doing or what we're expecting from them through positive words. So we're going to run through these 4 recognitions. Again, these will be provided to you guys at the end of the presentation. So these are just some examples that you might use in your household, and kind of we'll give you the little tips and tricks on them. So an active recognition, you might say something like, I noticed that you are holding your pencil and looking at your daily planner. So you're actively recognizing and noticing what they're doing. There's no judgment. We're going to like to say is truth of the moment. What is happening right now? And we want you to be very specific. Again, we don't want them to be able to deny what you are actively recognizing. The overall goal is to get at least 10 to 20 of these done a day, which sounds like a ton. And we all felt that way when we went through this training also. But once you kind of pick up, especially on active, they start to slip off your tongue, and it makes it 10 times easier. Another one is experimental. So you might say something like, I noticed that you have your daily planner open and you are holding your pencil. That shows that you're getting ready to start your homework. So again, you were doing an active recognition, but you're also adding a character quality, and this adds to the value of who your child really is. Again, we want to be factual and undeniable and really actively notice what they're doing in the present time.
Thank you, Kyla. All right, so the next 2 recognitions, we have proactive here. So proactive is really, as we mentioned when we were discussing stand 3, it's basically honoring and energizing of the rules that have not been broken. It's an opportunity to identify success in what isn't happening that could be. So, like, for example, you could, if you're saying something like, hey, Jason, I see that you haven't been barging into your sister's room without knocking. That shows me that you're demonstrating self-control and thoughtfulness. Another example on the page. I noticed that you have your daily planner open and you're holding your pencil. That shows me that you're getting ready to start your homework, which shows lots of focus and responsibility. There's multiple ways to do proactive, and there's different opportunities within that you can look at when you are provided with that language. Creative recognition is really exactly that. It's creating an opportunity to provide positive recognition on even a microscopic moment in time, or creating success that might not otherwise even exist yet, by starting with a clear request and then celebrating any moment or any movement in the right direction. You know, this is also challenging as well, but it's just, I'll give you an example. So thinking about one of my triggers, when I see my son's dirty towel on the floor, I just want to scream. Because they know what the expected behavior is. However, if I'm going to pretend or imagine I'm the producer of my life, what am I going to shed light on? You know, I have an opportunity to put some things in the shadows. So instead of just screaming, hey, pick up your dirty towel, I could say something like, I noticed that you put your dirty clothes in the hamper. That shows a lot of responsibility and helpfulness. Thank you so much. Now I need you to go hang up your towel. It's just like these little ways of approaching the approach that we have in order to add to their inner dialogue, but also work on the relationship that hopefully will then have your child kind of correct their own behavior. All right, so going back to the truth of the moment with Kyla.
Yes, so the truth of the moment is acknowledging and responding to your child's behavior in the present moment. So the overall approach of the Nurtured Heart approach is really recognizing what's happening in that time frame right away. We don't want to necessarily recognize, oh, I noticed that you did put your dish in the sink or in the dishwasher, but kind of applaud it when it's happening. So right now, what is happening that can be applauded? Like that song right here, right now, like we want to know what is happening right now that we can applaud. So back to the picture that we showed you in the beginning of the presentation, given some of these tools or some of this language that we provided or talked about in this presentation so far, I just want you to think, how might you react a little bit differently to this picture, given these tools, these recognitions, and these emotionally nutritious words? We might say something like, I see you move some of your toys to make a path. That shows responsibility because you don't want to break the toys that you care so much about. And really energizing that positivity that there is a path at least to get to their bed. They're getting there safely, and we're not going to damage any toys on the way there.
Perfect. Okay. So the $2 ticket story, again, is kind of just like another story that NHA likes to use to emphasize, again, what we're choosing to energize and the stands, the absolute no, absolute yes. So imagine that you're parked in the legal spot and you receive a $300 ticket. An intense person or child is going to look for an argument with anyone willing to provide them with that relationship. They're going to walk up and down the street, the sidewalk, they're flailing their hands around, they're really, really upset, and they want to feel heard, right? Similar if you think about like the baby video. The baby was just going back and forth, just wants that person to see them. But now imagine that the same person parks in the legal spot and receives a $2 ticket, but there's no one there to argue with, okay? This person may become infuriated, walking up and down with their arms, trying to provoke someone, but no one is giving them the attention or relationship that they're looking for. They want to feel heard. They want to feel seen, but there's no one around to provide them with that. This person will continue to park in this illegal parking spot over and over and over again and continue to get those unenergized $2 tickets, okay? So they're receiving a consequence with no energy or reward in relationship. Eventually, they will correct their own behavior because they're not getting their relationship or their junk food or getting the buttons pressed on the toy that they want, okay? Then they ultimately go park in the legal spot. The second they come back to return We can commend them for their persistence and their sense of justice, wanting to feel heard. We will just overflow them with positive attention as soon as they then corrected their own behavior. It's like sending our children to their room for a consequence. We are not giving them the gift of ourselves or energizing that relationship while they are there. The consequence was mutually given. There's no energy. Upon their return, the second you hear that they're calmly rejoining the family or going to do what you asked them to do, that's when you jump in with those recognitions.
All right, let's continue with a basketball analogy. Everything always relates back to basketball. So I've been coaching basketball a very long time. And the reality is that all the kids want to play. They don't want to be on the bench. But the problem is we sometimes make the bench more rewarding. So think of a student that's maybe struggling to come to school, that is refusing to come or wants to stay home and doesn't want to be there, right? We don't want to energize that negativity. We sometimes, and I've been guilty of it before as well, and providing a home environment that they're having some fun and doing some things that they should not be doing. They should be in the classroom learning, reading and writing and completing math, but maybe they have access to the TV or to their iPad. Think of the last time maybe your child was defiant to you or didn't follow a directive. Now go back to stand one. We don't want to energize any negativity. So we're not going to water the weeds. Why even put a drop of gasoline on the fire and make things worse? We're eagerly, in stand one, we're eagerly waiting for that tiny small moment to dive back in when they begin to rejoin what we're asking them to do, even the smallest of actions. So think of your child sitting down and struggling with homework. And in past evenings, they may have gotten frustrated or had an outburst or wiped the books off the table or the laptop. And in this moment, you see them take a deep breath. And they pick their pencil back up. Now you dive back in and your lights of your toy, you are beeping and your features are going off. I really, really appreciate it. I see that you're frustrated and this homework assignment is hard. I saw that you took a deep breath and it's showing me that you're really persevering through this homework. It's not easy. I'm here to help you, but I am so proud that you sat back down, took a deep breath, and you're giving it your best shot. I'm really happy. Remember, we're going to celebrate what they could have done, which they didn't. I'm so happy that you didn't get frustrated or slam your book off the table, that you're continuing to work hard, and I am so proud of you. I love that about you. And now we're thinking of another small example, something that they should do, like brushing their teeth every night, right? That's maybe a directive you're giving them. Please go upstairs and brush your teeth. It's something they should do. And if they're doing that, even if they don't normally do, and they follow the direction the first time given, it's something to celebrate. And we're going to dive in to that relationship. Now, a lot of people and parents that I speak to, they often say, why would we recognize someone or something that they should be doing? They're supposed to be doing that. So why should we recognize that and celebrate that? NHA says that should is a very, very dangerous word, that we should stop shoulding all over ourselves, because NHA teaches us to catch the great, even how small or insignificant it is. We want to recognize the smallest of details. Now, you can flip the slide, Diane. We want to kind of give you a top 10 takeaway list here. So bring kind of everything back together, and then in a few minutes, we'll open it up for questions. But we kind of went through the presentation and we talked earlier, and these were kind of our top 10 takeaways that we all agreed upon. The first is obviously that stand one, which is the basis of the NHA. Do not energize negativity. Remember, your love for your child is never turned off. You are not ignoring. Your love is always there. You are just pausing the energy flow in that moment. Number two, do not undervalue the gift of yourself. Remember the Toys R Us analogy. At the core of everything is the relationship between you or your son and daughter. That is at the core of everything. You are the common denominator in every single relationship.
Number three, consistently acknowledge positive behaviors, no matter how small. Your child, picked up their Legos, amazing. Let's recognize that in the present moment. Another one is.
Let me jump in on that for 2 seconds. Sorry. So on number three right there, consistently acknowledge. If I'm a kid, right, guys, and I am invisible when I do the right thing, even if it's the smallest of things, but my teacher or my parent only shows me attention, only cares or shows me value when I'm listening, then this is when I'm not listening or being disrespectful to them, this is a problem. I'm learning and interpreting my own value. NHA is teaching us to catch the great, no matter how small or insignificant. Sorry, Kyla.
You're good.
No,
And
absolutely.
number 4, reset. Like I kind of talked about before, genuinely having a reset moment. We might think, oh, I need to reset myself, but genuinely giving yourself that minute, 2 minutes to take a breath, take the dog out, allowing your child to also reset themselves, give them a moment of silence just to gather their own thoughts, reflect, things like that. Talk about the rules not being broken when they are not being broken is very important to also think about.
And number 6, challenge yourself to give 10 recognitions a day, no matter how small. And like we spoke about earlier, it may sound even a little silly at first, but we want you to feel like it's authentic. So don't have to start with all the recognitions. You could just start with the first one, whatever feels comfortable and natural for you. Number 7, respond in the present moment. Try your best to respond in the moment when it's happening and then letting it go. Sometimes what happens is when we're unable to reset, we may bring whatever energy we were just triggered into the next moment, and that can impact the truth of that moment. And then number 9, is using your nutritious words to build their inner wealth, which we will be excited to share with you. So you can practice in your home with children, with your neighbors, with spouses, with whoever you live with your parents, and just to give it a try.
Time in versus time out. Think of the basketball analogy. We are looking for those toes on the sideline. Time out simply cannot exist unless there's a time in. I'll say that again. You cannot have a timeout unless time in exists as well. We are eagerly looking for them to rejoin the game. And the truth is they want to be part of that game. Be consistent. Say what you mean and mean what you say. If we have 3 strikes or 3 warnings that like Kyla talked about earlier, and the rule was already broken 2 times by your child, was it even really a rule in the first place, right? So we want to be clear and consistent, say what we mean and mean what we say. And number 10, finally, give yourself some grace. Please give yourself some grace. No one ever said parenting is easy. This is a process. Be good to yourself, take care of yourself. Think of the airplane masks falling from the ceiling and what the safety video says when you take a flight. You must put your own mask on first before helping someone else, and that includes your son or your daughter. We want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. We're going to open it up for some questions in a little bit or some comments, but we want to thank you for joining us on this Thursday night, and we really enjoyed sharing this valuable information with you.
Thank
The
you.
next slide is some resources too, if we just want to
yeah.
put that for really quick.
Thank you, Kyla.
So these are some of Howard Glasser's books. I think I mentioned earlier, 4 of his books are in the top 1% sold on Amazon. They're great reads. I recommend getting one of them. Specifically, Transforming the Difficult Child is a really good book.
Okay. So please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat for us.
Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat and we will read them out loud. And then I'm going to re-spotlight everybody so you can see them all. But thank you so much, everybody, for being here tonight. We really enjoyed learning with you. I certainly was learning along with you. So let's just check the chat. Hold on one second. All right. The moment of calm after reset is when admin and educators can listen and learn and reflect. Who do you teach these skills to? Only teachers, or does lunch staff? Who actually are we teaching these skills to? And I can spotlight whoever wants to answer that. Actually, you know what? I think I can spotlight all of you. Hold on. There you go.
Yeah, I don't mind jumping in and starting that one off. That's a really, really good point. Obviously, the most important conversations that and I don't want to speak for Kyla and Diana, but for myself, the most important conversations I have over the course of a school day is during the reflection piece. So after the behavior has occurred, obviously we are working with children who have underdeveloped brains. Our brains and our frontal lobes are growing until we're 26 years of age. So we don't always make the best decision in elementary school, where you can be very impulsive and say things and do things we don't mean. All of our kids are great and wonderful, but we do make mistakes. And the follow-up conversations to reflect on those mistakes and own those mistakes and fix upon them is very, very important. So I love having those conversations. Relative to teaching the staff, we recently delivered a similar presentation on our staff professional development day to a bunch of different teachers and paraprofessionals. I personally work with a lot of the paras in our building, because a lot of the paras are working with our kids during those unstructured periods of the day, during lunch or recess, when it's a little less structured. It's a little easier to be impulsive and make mistakes and say things and do things. So that language is very important, and we're working regularly with all of our staff to empower them with the language and create a common language.
Thank you, Craig. And I just want to jump in as well. So, you know, children also have access to, in every classroom in all of our schools, we have a calming corner where children know that they're encouraged to go to reset themselves should they feel dysregulated at any time. And in the calming corners, there's multiple tools for them to assist and identify how they're feeling and to help with their self-regulation and their self-awareness. We also are teaching the students their I messages frequently, and we do work with the lunch staff on teaching them the I feel or I am messaging. So we are working across the board to try to thread these skills in at multiple different levels.
Will the slides be available for us after? We can provide the slides. I actually always send out a letter after we have parent academies with any resources. So in that letter, you'll see the nutritious words that our team was talking about. And then also we can put the slides in there for you as well. So you'll receive that letter following. It usually takes us about a week, because we like to put the video of the recording in there as well for you. So you'll see that letter come out about a week. One more question: how do you encourage a student that's shy or scared to talk to adults or teachers?
I could start off. Something that we do is all three of us do have the opportunity to go into classrooms among all four of our schools that we go to. So kind of just becoming a familiar face, I've noticed just coming into the school since September is really useful. Technically, we like split some schools around, but you know, between myself and Diana, we seem to overlap a lot. So children just become comfortable with our faces, and in that sense, I've noticed that they become more vulnerable and willing to talk to us. Craig or Diana, do you guys want to feed off of that? I just know that, you know, being as present as possible has been really beneficial in my area.
Diana, do you want to amend? Or do you want me to go?
Yeah, you know, how to encourage, you know, I go through this as a mom. My son does not talk at all, and he does not advocate for himself. He'll come home with like a fever and not have told anyone all day, or he'll come home and not have eaten lunch because he couldn't unzip his backpack. So I can understand that as a parent, not just a person who works in education, but how to encourage a child who is shy or scared to talk to adults or teachers. So if the child has a hard time verbalizing needs and wants, that's why I really advocate for the calming corners, because there's many nonverbal ways to communicate needs that children may be feeling. Many teachers have need strips where you can literally just circle what you need. I need water, I need a walk, I need to take a break. There's a lot of nonverbal signaling as well that can go on in the classrooms, which is also a very helpful tool for students who just have a difficult time talking to adults or any perceived authority. Craig, do you want to add on, or?
Yeah, my head was just going to the idea of self-esteem. So high self-esteem breeds confidence. So, you know, it goes back to what you spoke about earlier, Diana, and building a child's inner wealth. So finding those small moments to increase their self-esteem. I mean, we go through thousands of thoughts every single day. So we want to make those positive and build their self-esteem and give them confidence. So make them feel safe in the moment. And as parents, we can model that for them, what it looks like, what it sounds like. give them sentence starters. What can they say to a teacher? What can they say to a peer? I also do, when I'm meeting with students for school-based counseling in the building, or even in private therapy in the past, I love to do a lot of role playing, especially with the elementary school child. So, as a parent, you could play the role of a peer or the role of a teacher or another staff member in the building and actually engage in an interactive role play with them and to build their confidence so they're comfortable when the situation is real.
Love
But
that.
this actually this question actually connects to what you're talking about right now. So for big feelings, right? A child that might struggle with more expressive language or having big emotions, in terms of talking to their peers, what would you recommend for natural conflict resolution when conflicts arise with peers?
Yeah, you want to all think on it? I mean, someone who has big, I'm repeating the question, someone who has big emotions, who may struggle with expressive language, confidence, etc. What would you recommend for natural conflict resolution, meaning without adult assistance?
Or I think the person was talking about when the child is unable to maybe express themselves, like, so when they are in peer conflict, I've seen this a lot, right? So I see this with my own kids. My one child will be able to say exactly how they feel and probably give you a thesis on it, whereas my other child will just shut down. So if there's a conflict, even if they're a social child, really, right? My one child will just not be able to respond. So is there a way to practice to resolve peer conflict when you have a child that has less confidence talking and sharing their side?
Yeah, I was just going to say most of the work is probably done behind the scenes. So again, going back to the modeling at home and giving them those sentence starters. So, I would suggest giving them literally the tools in their pocket that they could pull out and utilize. So, this is a sentence starter that I could use when this situation occurs. This is what I could say, and almost have 3 or 4 blanket statements that they could go to put express how they're feeling, right? And then that has to, again, most of the work I feel is done behind the scenes where you're modeling it then and then giving them confidence when it does occur. And really focusing on I statements, because anytime we're pointing or using you or you or you, the conflict naturally gets worse. So really modeling appropriate tone and volume of voice, and knowing that most conflicts are solved and resolved naturally when we are using kind words and appropriate tone and volume and modeling those I statements for them.
100%.
Good
I
place to
statement,
begin.
I statement, I statement, I messages. You can use whichever. 100%. And then maybe once they're able to do that, depending on what the conflict is, giving them a great tool, or something as simple as like, we're going to rock, paper, scissors it out, or, something that's depending on their age, of course, what would be something that they could do to solve whatever conflict they were having.
So this question really stems from the 2 videos that were shared were more toddlers and babies. And it's funny because I can see my child that's not a baby doing similar things, maybe not rolling on the ground, but this parent is asking, do you have examples? They're saying of videos, but do you have examples maybe on the top of your head right now that is an example of maybe a school age child kind of having that tantrumy kind of moment as the baby did, but more of an age appropriate for a grade school child? Do you have like an example that you can give?
Yeah, I mean, to me, those 2 videos really replicate what is occurring at many. I mean, that first video with the tantrums, that was my son for many years, even at older ages. So it was really to depict the negative attention that a child seeks. But absolutely, at a elementary school age child, a tantrum is going to manifest and look differently in so many different ways. I mean, it could be as simple as shutting down and putting their head down on the desk at school. It could be shutting down at home, removing themselves from you and isolating themselves in the room. Right? It could be frustration and manifest as anger and aggression in terms of throwing things, and it could manifest as inappropriate language. So it could appear, depending on your child, in so many different ways, but what's consistent is our response. We're really monitoring that thermometer at all times, keeping it in the mid-yellow to green, and using calm, nutritious language and focusing on the relationship, knowing that we're not going to get anywhere in that moment, that everyone has to go through their tantrum, for lack of better words, to get into a regulated state again.
Mhm.
And in
Yeah,
terms of the baby video, I would just say, like, there's so many times, and I witnessed the day where even as teachers or staff members, we kind of forget to reset and we engage in a back and forth. And I know as parents, I'm guilty of that too, where I energize that negative behavior and I go back and forth and I catch myself and I'm like, wait a second, am I arguing with a teenager right now? Like, what's happening? I need to slow down, reset myself, and then kind of revisit the relationship when everyone is calm. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and then to jump in with exactly, like while you're talking, Craig, and I'm sure most of us are, we're thinking about all of those battles that we get into all the time. For myself, with a 10 and a 12-year-old, a lot of them happen during bedtime, transitions in the garage, and then so I would say like those attention-seeking behaviors, so to speak, trying to identify what are those, right? Is it like getting your nighttime routine? Is it getting your sneakers and your jacket in your backpack and having a meltdown because, we're rewarding them with that back and forth, or they're arguing, or that attention in the garage? I think that's why all stands are so important, because we cannot absolute no and absolute yes energy without stand 3. So like having those clear expectations of what behavior we're looking for all kind of like works together in diminishing those attention-seeking behaviors, because we will reward them the second they do put their jacket on and show up and walk down and get into the car to go to school or get online to go to bus. The second that they do that, we're jumping back into the relationship and we're turning all of our buttons back on. But it's like a whole process. They all work together.
Thank you very much. So there are other thank yous in here and such great information, and so a lot of celebratory comments in the chat. So I appreciate that from all of you out there. Thank you, Ms. Capani. Thank you, Mr. Alfano, Ms. Murphy. We appreciate you being here tonight with us. Thank you for giving us your hour and listening in wherever you were. And we appreciate you at home helping us support kids in our schools. So thank you very much to the 3 of you again. We hope everybody has a wonderful night, and please look for my email with all of the documents and the video links. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone. Have a great night.